Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm truly delighted and honored that Dr. Peter Marks has kindly agreed to join us today. Dr. Marks is the director at the Center for Biologic Evaluation and Research at the US Food and Drug Administration. CBER is responsible for approval of vaccines, biologics, biosimilars, among others. Being at the helm of affairs, the contribution by Dr. Marks to the global fight against COVID is remarkable. Early during the pandemic, he was a key member to help jumpstart some of the research on vaccines that needed to happen. His ideas eventually became the multi-billion-dollar federal program, Operation Warp Speed, that has supported many of the leading vaccine candidates. Dr. Mark has a graduate degree in cell and molecular biology. He also has a medical degree from New York University. He has a wide-ranging experience in academics and also with the industry. He joined the FDA in 2012 as the deputy director and became the center director in January 2016. Thank you, Dr. Marks, for gracing us with your presence. With great pleasure, I now invite Dr. Marks to deliver the keynote.
Thanks, Shakti, for such a kind introduction. So what I'd like to talk about is what we've done in the United States to help deploy the vaccines during this COVID-19 pandemic. And the important thing here for us at FDA is that we have a role to play in vaccine development across the life cycle of vaccine development. So we not only start off with manufacturers at the very beginning when they start the development of their vaccines and they don't even have a regulatory filing yet and talk to them about their development plans. We then follow that through the entire process and we continue to do post-marketing surveillance. We're also involved in strain selection and reference standard production when appropriate. We do lot release. And all of this is done ultimately to help ensure public confidence in vaccines, which at least in the United States is one of the most important things that we're dealing with right now because we really need people to be willing to take vaccines and we need to overcome vaccine hesitancy. One of the things I like to show is how we have sped up vaccine development. Many people wonder how we have taken something that normally takes 3 or 4 years and we've done it in less than a year. And basically, it's simply by getting rid of dead space that normally is in vaccine development. Normally in traditional vaccine development, one does phase 1 and then stops, looks, and then does phase 2, stops, looks, and then goes to phase 3. And one waits till very late in the process in order to actually scale up the manufacturing process. For the vaccine development for COVID-19 vaccines, however, we've done seamless trials where we've gone from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 without any dead space in between. And while those trials were going on, we've watched as manufacturers have tried to do their scale up of manufacturing, anticipating that they were going to be successful. Now, they didn't know they would be, and so they were making vaccine at risk. But in a pandemic with so many lives being lost, that is a very reasonable risk to take. So really, the top line messages here is that vaccine development has been accelerated without cutting corners. In the United States, we've helped do this through production of 2 guidance documents, one on the licensure and development of COVID vaccines, and one on our emergency use authorization, which is the way we can make an investigational product widely available as an unapproved product in our country. And that's how the current 2 vaccines that are deployed have been made available. We have said as part of our emergency use authorization for vaccines that we would require them to come from, with the knowledge that they came from well-done clinical trials. And we said that we'd have to have clear and compelling evidence from large, well-designed phase 3 clinical trials. We wanted to have a clear evaluation of the quality, safety, and efficacy of the vaccines. We've taken these to public advisory committee meetings so that people could see through a transparent process what we were doing to evaluate them. And we are doing enhanced post-deployment surveillance to make sure that we see any emerging safety concerns and we can address them. The safety monitoring that we're doing includes passive monitoring through our traditional vaccine adverse event reporting system, also known as VAERS, and also the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has put in place the vSafe text monitoring system for COVID-19 vaccine safety. We have active surveillance that is going and looking for adverse events through the vaccine safety data link, the clinical immunization safety assessment. Both of those are run by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And at FDA, we have a large database system called the Sentinel BEST system, which covers more than 100 million lives and is linked to the electronic health record. And we're monitoring about 15 safety outcomes of interest. These are not known adverse events with these vaccines, but these are ones that have been seen with other vaccines that might be of interest. So just to very quickly say, in the United States, we currently have 2 authorized vaccines, one from Pfizer-BioNTech and one Moderna. They happen to both be mRNA vaccines. Obviously, there are a number of other vaccines in development. The ones that we have in the United States include the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, the Janssen vaccine. The Janssen vaccine has recently submitted an emergency use authorization request, which is pending. And then there are protein subunit vaccines, such as the Novavax and Sanofi vaccines that are also in development. The Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna trials were both large randomized clinical trials. You can see that for Pfizer, BioNTech, it was over 40,000 people. For Moderna, it was over 30,000 people. For us in the United States, it was very important that the trial enrollment matched the diversity of our population, and indeed for both of these vaccines, it did. The efficacy for both of these vaccines was quite remarkable, with 94 to 95% overall efficacy, and efficacy that only tailed off very slightly as the population got older. So very encouraging, and vaccines that were also effective against severe COVID-19, a very important feature. They do come with some side effects, and particularly after the second dose of the vaccines, there tend to be a fair amount of injection site pain, which is transient, mostly mild to moderate. And then there are more systemic symptoms that can occur, such as fatigue, headache, muscle pains, chills, joint pain, fever, flu-like symptoms that generally resolve within a day and are generally mild to moderate. That being said, in the United States, we're trying to tell people that after they get the second dose, they should probably plan on having a relatively easy day when they get the second dose of these mRNA vaccines. One of the emerging things we did see with the deployment of these vaccines have been some severe allergic reactions. These were anaphylactic reactions that we first saw in the United Kingdom, but then we saw in the United States when they were deployed. We note that these vaccines should not be administered to anyone who has a known history of severe allergic reaction to any component of the vaccine, and one of those components is polyethylene glycol. And we are always having appropriate medical treatment available for severe allergic reactions where these vaccines are administered. Now, one good piece of news is that the rate of these allergic reactions seems to be settling out at a rate that is somewhere at 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 200,000 individuals vaccinated, or even lower. And we'll continue to monitor that. One of the final things I'll mention is that as we're all thinking about COVID-19, we are going to have to address the COVID-19 variants. We are very much right now in the United States thinking about how we will issue guidance to help manufacturers know how to change their vaccines and what they'll need to do in terms of clinical studies to decide what and when they can add a component to their vaccine. One of the good pieces of news, though, is as we're considering this, we're not likely to require clinical outcome studies, in other words, large-scale randomized clinical trials. It will more likely be smaller immunogenicity studies. So just to summarize, we've managed to shorten development timelines for vaccines without compromising vaccine safety or efficacy. We've tried to follow as transparent a public process as we can so that we can increase confidence in these vaccines, because we feel like this evaluation of safety and efficacy in the public eye will help people accept these vaccines. And that's really what we'll need to do to help bring this pandemic to an end. Thanks so much for listening.
That was indeed an insightful presentation, Dr. Marks. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for having agreed to take some questions from us. To start with, I wanted to ask for your views on the equitable distribution of vaccines and the role India can play in complementing the global supply.
Thanks for that question. You know, this is clearly a situation where we are in a global pandemic. We have to get this under control, not just in any given nation, but across all nations. And so I think we will need to collaborate, and we will need to do our part in the United States to try to help be able to export as much vaccine as we can, but we will need India and others to do all of the production that they can to help us globally. And so I think we are really in very good mutual alignment here in this need to use our mutual pharmaceutical capacities to help bring an end to this pandemic.
You also spoke about the precautions that FDA is taking to ensure that the vaccines are safe and efficacious. But there is still a public inertia in taking vaccines. How are you addressing that?
We're doing that through outreach and trying to understand what each group has as concerns. We found that different groups tend to have different concerns about vaccines. And so understanding what individuals need in terms of information or in terms of seeing others take the vaccine is very important. In some populations, it's a matter of providing the information about the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines. In other populations, though, it's really about, it's more of a person-to-person thing, where if somebody knows that somebody that they respect has taken the vaccine, they will go and take the vaccine. So I think we're in a situation where we need to use all the tools we can, provide the information when we need to, rely on social networks when we can, and also, importantly, combat misinformation about vaccines. In the United States, we've had some pretty bad episodes of people spreading misinformation, and we are not afraid at FDA, and others are also not afraid to go after and stop that misinformation from spreading.
A connected question to this, the life sciences industry on the whole has played a very crucial role during this pandemic, be it drugs, be it diagnostics, be it devices. So how do you think this has, the contribution from the industry has changed the perception, the public perception on the industry itself?
Yeah, I think that when we come out of this, the vaccine hesitancy and some of the look of people towards what industry does will probably change to a more positive light. I think it's very clear that industry has gone out of their way here, often to make sure that things were developed more quickly, production has happened more quickly. And I hope that ultimately there's a more positive perception of what the pharmaceutical industry brings to the table in terms of helping human health.
Fantastic. United States and India have shared a long history of association in the life sciences sector, particularly the affordable generic segment. And, it is a matter of immense pride that the state that I come from, Telangana, has the highest number of FDA-approved sites globally. We have about 5% of the total FDA-approved sites. And, we are the only state in the world to have more than 200 FDA-approved sites. How would you think that such strategic global relationships can be strengthened to ensure better healthcare to the global population?
Well, I think throughout this pandemic, it's become clear that the more we have dialogue with one another, the more we can find collaborations, the stronger we'll be overall. So I'm hoping that as we come to the post-pandemic period, we'll start to have more dialogue, more collaborations, and that will actually make us all stronger in terms of our ability to respond to future challenges, and even just to go about our business in normal times.
Yeah, talking about affordable generic segment, I also wanted to touch upon biosimilars, which again is an area of interest for India. To what extent do you see the market changing with biosimilars in the next few years? And a connected question to this is, I believe there is apparent slowdown in the evaluation mechanism of biologics and biosimilars due to the pandemic. How are you bringing this back to speed?
Good questions, both. I think we'll anticipate that there will be more biosimilars as people get back up to speed. Also, because I think we're finally in the United States, people are getting more experience with them. But you're absolutely right that the pandemic has slowed things down somewhat. They've slowed down people's ability to bring forward their applications, and they've also slowed us down a little bit at FDA. We have been working on kind of recovery plans, and I think hopefully within the coming months, we'll start to speed up again as we move hopefully to a post-pandemic period.
India has one of the largest number of the biosimilar approvals. However, a very few Indian companies have been able to penetrate the US or European markets. What is your advice to the Indian, biosimilar makers?
Persistence. Persistence. Don't give up. I think persistence here. I think it's challenging in the biosimilar market for everyone trying to get in it right now. And I think it's going to become hopefully easier as people become more familiar with biosimilars. I think part of what we're dealing with here are the people, the innovator products have a lot of following, and it takes a while to break into that market.
How is CBER helping drug regulatory agencies across the world, in other countries, in their examination of new applications for biosimilars?
Yeah, so we actually don't have a tremendous number of biosimilar applications because we do not handle monoclonal antibodies or therapeutic biologics in our center. We handle vaccines, blood products, gene and cell therapies. That's in our sister center. And I know that the Center for Drugs that handles those is trying, they really have tried to help out on a global regulatory basis, just like we're trying to work on a global regulatory basis to help with cell and gene therapies, because we believe, and we have had some conversations with our Indian colleagues about this, because we believe that harmonization will be good for all of us, that redoing regulatory work or redoing studies to satisfy different regulators, that just adds cost to development and tends to discourage innovation.
I have two follow-up questions on this. One is about the regulatory, structure itself, and the second one on cell and gene therapy, which you touched upon. I'll go with the regulatory one first. Do you foresee a world where there'll be a single regulatory standard to be followed throughout?
What a great question. That maybe is years in the future. I hope we can start to work in that direction. I think, the International Conference of Harmonization has tried to work that way for certain things. I guess, and you have WHO, that it's not a regulatory organization that works in this direction. My hope is that we can gradually make progress in that direction. It may not be something that will happen tomorrow, but every bit of progress that we can make, I think, is helpful, and we'll take it.
And the second question I had was on the cell and gene. There are newer innovations that are coming, but then these are increasingly getting out of reach for patients. For instance, the gene therapy that was approved recently. How do you think this anomaly can be corrected?
The cost issue is what you're talking about, or the
the cost, affordability.
I would say the following, that this is where we as a regulatory agency we are leaning into helping with manufacturing, and because I think until we see better manufacturing, more robust manufacturing, reduced development costs, we're going to continue to see these prices that are just not sustainable. So we're trying to help in the development of more efficient, effective manufacturing processes, because if the cost of goods could be reduced by half an order to an order of magnitude, then gene therapy would be potentially a more viable option. Because for some diseases right now, gene therapy is actually cost effective, if the cost of the gene therapy itself came down somewhat.
Sure. A personal question. You've played several roles in your career. You've wide-ranging experience, right from studying internal medicine, doing research, being in academia, and being in industry, and now at CBER. What is your guidance? What is your take on the collaboration between different stakeholder groups? Be it healthcare, be it academia, research, and industry.
So I think the most important thing I've learned is that there's no one best in this groups. We have to respect each other. We each bring something to the table, academics, industry, and government. And I think we work best when we collaborate together, we respect one another, and we work together. And I think that is a lesson coming from this pandemic, that we are very strong when we all work together. And so I don't view any one of these as superior to the other. I view us as colleagues working together.
Perhaps the last question is technology is disrupting, across industry, the revolution. I wanted to ask you how FDA is keeping pace with the rapid technological advancement.
So at FDA, we have a researcher reviewer model where many of our reviewers also do applied scientific research. They attend conferences when you can actually attend conferences in person. Now they're attending them virtually. And they stay very much in tune with the latest research. That's very helpful, particularly in gene therapies, cell therapies, where every few months there's a new major advance that we have to keep track of. So we find that model works very well for us, and we'll continue it.
Yeah, we're very hopeful that we will have you with us physically during the next event. This time it has to be virtual. But there is so much more we would like to talk to you about. But, I'm afraid this is all the time that we have. It was lovely talking to you, Dr. Marks. Thank you so much for joining us at 18th BioAsia.
Thank you very much, Shakti.